Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to another episode of Lunch Guide. My name is Chef Andy and I'll be your host for today. We are going to be making one of my favorite, most loved pastries that I actually like to make at home, and we're going to be making some homemade chocolate chip cookies. We're going to be working with some nice beautiful ingredients to my right here, which I'm just going to introduce you to. So from the front end there, I've got some bicarbonate of soda and some salt. I've got some beautiful semi-sweet dark chocolate which has just been roughly chopped up. I've got some brown sugar, I've got some butter there, I've got 2 eggs, vanilla essence, I've got some flour at the back here and some white sugar. So I'm just going to give you a chance now to go and grab your pens and papers, and when we come back, I'm going to show you how to transform these beautiful ingredients into cookies that you can die for. See you then. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are just tuning in, if you were with us earlier and we went for a break, now we're back. We are just going to now get straight into it. We are going to be making some homemade chocolate chip cookies, and I'm going to show you one of my easiest, most loved home recipes at the moment. So what I'm going to first do is I always recommend you work with 2 bowls. The reason for this is I like to explain how the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients come to combine at the end. So all I'm going to do first is strain my flour. This is just to make sure there is no impurities in your flour, and to make sure if there is anything in there, it's a little easier to see and a little easier to remove. If you're working with a plastic sieve, if you're working with a metallic one, as long as it serves the purpose, I recommend go with the one that's easiest for you to find, okay? So now to that, I'm also going to sieve in just about half a teaspoon of salt and some bicarbonate of soda and some white sugar. Right, so I'm just gonna give that a quick sieve. Right, then I discard whatever remains in there. And now, just to finish that off, a bit of brown sugar. Right, so we're just going to leave that on the side. Now to this bowl, I'm going to be adding the eggs, which we're just going to quickly beat with a whisk. So I'm going with 2 very regular organic eggs, and then I'm going to go in with 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract or vanilla essence if you prefer. And last but not least, I'm going to be adding my chocolate and my butter. Now the thing is, you can't be able to mix butter that hasn't been melted into this mixture. Remember, you're making cookies. The only thing that could happen is you would end up having lumps of butter inside your cookie and it might not taste good. So what I always recommend, just before it goes in there, I always insist just throw it in your microwave, set it to about a minute and just let it melt down. And all I'm going to do while we wait for that is I'm just going to quickly whip up the eggs. Right, so we're gonna give that just a few seconds, and the butter now we're going to just melt the butter now. We're gonna incorporate it in here and we're gonna combine everything together. So with a different spoon, I'm just going to give my dry ingredients a bit of a mix. And I always recommend, please try and rotate your bowl while you mix. It actually makes the difference. It actually allows you to get all the ingredients incorporated a little much faster. Okay, so once I've mixed that in, all I'm going to add now is my chopped semi-sweet chocolate. You might think of using something different like cooking chocolate. It might not be as sweet, but it's still workable. All you'd have to do is probably just adjust your sugar levels, because semi-sweet chocolate and bitter chocolate will not give you the same result. All right. So our chocolate and flour is nicely mixed up. Now we're gonna check on our melted butter. As you can see, it's perfect. Right, so I'm just going to add my eggs and vanilla to this big bowl, and then I'm just going to go in with the melted butter. We just threw into the microwave, and all I'm going to do is work my way around the bowl. Remember, this might take you a little longer if you're working with a wooden spoon, or if you're working with a plastic bowl. So 2 good recommendations to work with, especially when you're working with this kind of a mixture. A stainless steel bowl will really be helpful, and for the spoon particularly, if you have a stainless steel one, it works. If you have plastic, it still does really good. Right, so I'm just going to use my spoon to just get that dough nice and incorporated. So this is something you can be able to make overnight. For the dough itself, you can actually be able to rest the dough in your fridge, and you can actually just take it out the following day, give it a bit of time to come down to room temperature, put it on your tray, and just go for it. Right. Okay, so we're starting to get to that stage where it's starting to become lumpy. And when you get to this stage, all I recommend is you may have to actually start using your hands. Remember, if you're working with an electric whisk or electric mixer, this could be easier. Then you don't really have to put your hands in there. But considering I'm not working with a machine today, I'm just going to use my hands. And I'm just going to combine that dough. So remember, the technique to making a good cookie is always give your dough a bit of rest once you're done making it. The reason for that is you actually get the flavors to really combine while it's resting. Your cookie actually develops most of the flavors from the resting, let alone the cooking process. So what we're going to do is, once we're done with this mixture, it's just going to go into the fridge. We already have another one that we made earlier. So I'm just going to throw that in the fridge, and we're going to allow it to cool off. And then I will just show you what a rested version looks like a little later in the show. So as you can see, I've managed to be able to mix all my ingredients, and as I said, it's a very precise recipe. As you can be able to see, I can be able to get the dough out of the bowl, and you can see the bowl remains clean. So as I said, especially when you're making cookies, you're looking for that precision when you're making your dough. This is one of the checkpoints for you to know that your dough is good to go and it's really, really well incorporated. So now all I'm going to do is just give that a firm press. Just try and squeeze out any air that might be in there, any air that could be trapped. Right, simple as that. And all I'm going to do now is cover this up, and we're going to give this some time to rest in the fridge. I also recommend, if you're gonna rest your cookie mixture and you think you might be in very much of a hurry to cook it immediately, I always recommend, if you're going to be doing it if you're thinking of being ahead of time, try and make the mixture in advance. Give it some time in the fridge. Even overnight works best. That's actually the one I recommend the most. Give it some time overnight, and when you actually take it out the next day, the flavors are really gonna be well incorporated. So now I'm just going to throw this in the fridge, and we're going to give it a little bit of time to rest. We're also going to go into a short commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to show you how to move this now onto your baking tray, how to set your baking tray ready to bake this, and how to just do it from there on. So see you after the short break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those who missed out on what we were doing just before the break, we were just resting our dough. So we have a different kind of dough in the fridge, and I have one that we had made earlier. So I'm just going to take it out of the bowl. So very, very simple technique to roll out your cookies. Just dust your working surface. Always just give it a bit of a press just to make sure there's no air inside it. And all I'm going to do is set it over the floured surface. Dust it a little more on the top. Then just using a rolling pin, you want to work it and make sure it is evenly thick from the edges all the way to the center. So always recommend start from the center and then just work your way towards the edges. And as soon as you get to the end, just stop. Give it a turn again. Cookie dough is very fragile if I haven't mentioned it already, so it's actually a matter of being very careful when you roll it out. It's good to spread it out, but always just give it a press and push it inside towards the center. Remember, this is a very moist cookie, so it will definitely be soft even when it goes into your oven. I'm just gonna finish that off like that. Simple as that. So what we're going to do now is we are just going to try some different techniques of decorating your cookie. So on the bowl here I've got some beautiful colored vermicelli, and all I'm going to do now, just for that, so that we see the difference, I'm going to split that in the center. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to be working with a ring. And please feel free, if you don't have this particular kind of mold, you could always just take the lid out of any containers that you have. Just pick one that is a size that you like and you can go with it. One thing to remember always is always dip it in a bit of flour. This actually makes sure that the dough doesn't stick. So just give it a shake on the side, and all you do is press in and lift, and you press in again and lift. Simple as that. And then just for the other side, just for me to be able to show you a different technique of finishing your cookies off, I normally just sprinkle my vermicelli right over the dough like that. And all I'm going to do now is, using my rolling pin, press it right in the center there and then just roll it out like that. The reason for doing so is that actually allows you to get the vermicelli to stick to the surface of the cookie. That way they don't actually all fall off after they're baked. So I'm going to be baking that on this sheet, and what I'm working with now is parchment paper. The reason for this is parchment paper allows you to get a nice glossy finish to your cookie, both at the bottom and at the top. Doesn't allow it to stick to the tray, and it's very much easier to take it off when it's ready. So all we are going to do now is lift that bit of dough sideways like that. I like to just use my knife to get that center piece out. And remember, it's also neater to have something to work with. If you do have some pastry knives, it also really helps, or palette knives for that matter. And all I'm going to do is just dust that off. So basically the side that I rolled out last, that was on the top, I just flip the cookie around, and that's the side that goes onto the surface of your tray. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. So I'm just going to give that a press like that. And all you do is just tear off the sides, easy as that, and you have your cookies ready to go. So for this particular one, because it has a bit of the garnish on the top, I'm just going to lay them as they are. And I'm just going to move those onto my baking sheet. So remember, the dough has been sitting in the fridge. It's now nice and set. It's a little nice and cold. That just allows it to hold. Remember, this has some butter in it. The moment you allow the dough to sit out too long, the butter oozes out, and what happens is you get a very flat cookie with no shape. So it is crucial to chill your dough. So this is going to be going into a preheated oven. So this is sitting at 180 to 190 degrees. These are going to be going in for about 10 to 15 minutes. And we're just going to set them about almost to the top end of the oven. So this is basically a very simple cookie, as I said, something that you can now be able to do yourselves. And I do have some cookies that I had done earlier. I'm just going to show you what those look like. So just going to clean that off. So I do have some cookies that we had done earlier. So this is just basically the same mixture of cookies. So this is already done. I'm now just going to finish them off. And remember, it's always good to be a little creative with your cookies. I always insist, try and decorate them if you can. If you can dip them in some chocolate and you have some, do it. If it's easier just to put some icing on, I would go with the same. But today I'm going to be using a simple one. I'm going to be using just plain simple icing sugar. So this is just very much icing sugar. So all I'm going to do with the cookies is just move them onto a plate and then just shake a bit of that icing onto the plate and just sprinkle right around like that. It always gives a nice beautiful finish, and it actually looks good even with your cookies. So I'm just going to move those onto my beautiful plate there like that. And we also have some with the vermicelli coating that's right on the top. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how simple it is to make chocolate chip cookies from home. As I mentioned earlier, feel free to try different things. You can always try and alternate the chocolate bits. You can try and use already chips, the chocolate chips that have already been portioned out. If you can't find that, if you can't find semi-sweet chocolate, you can also go with cooking chocolate. And I guess the rest is self-explanatory. From my end, it's been a pleasure. You've been watching Lunch Guide on Brand Plus TV. Your host has been Chef Andy, and we have been making chocolate chip cookies. It's been a pleasure being with you today. So from my studios and from your end, it's been a pleasure being with you today. Have a lovely lunch.